Inazuma Eleven. You know it, I know it. It's the game and anime where 14-year-olds fire off literal nukes on the pitch and no one bats an eye. With the release of the new Inazuma Eleven Victory Road, I figured I'd take this opportunity to rank every Inazuma Eleven game since I love this franchise so much. I won't be including SD and Inazuma Eleven Online since unsurprisingly I haven't gotten the chance to play them. With that said, let's get them ranked. At number 10, at the very bottom of the ranking, we have Inazuma Eleven Strikers. Now don't get me wrong, I actually love the Strikers games, but they're somewhat of a guilty pleasure, and even as biased as I am towards them, I can tell they aren't great games. Strikers plays much more like a traditional football game compared to the mainline titles. It replaces command battles with a more action-oriented approach. The problem is that it is fundamentally flawed in many ways.
I'm so hungry!
First, it's basically impossible to score with normal shots, unless you use a specific cheese setup. Every player has techniques that range from level 1 to 3, and you can only use them when their special gauge is full. How fast it feels and its starting position vary based on the player's morale, which is a super weird mechanic because you can't alter it in any shape or form. The special gauge also makes dribbling Hisatsus almost pointless, since whenever a player uses any kind of special move, their bar depletes fully. So picture this, you're approaching goal with a full special gauge. There's only a defender between you and the keeper. You choose to use a dribble Hisatsu to get past the defender. Now you're one-on-one with the keeper and nothing. You can't score. You either pass it back or never use the offensive Hisatsu to begin with. Very counterintuitive if you ask me. This spin-off is pretty much a fan service game. You can finish the quote-unquote story mode in less than 5 hours. After that, you get to build your dream team with the characters you fancy the most, play more matches against the CPU, and try to 5-nail every team in exhibition matches to get all the platinum medals. But that's pretty much it. It's not all bad though. As a fan service package, Strikers nails the presentation. It looks great, features stadiums from the first 3 games, and most importantly, every Hisatsu is voiced and has its own shot trail. Not even the 3DS games do that, and that's huge for immersion. There's also nice attention to detail. Loads of character-specific interactions and animations that change based on the player's personality when they score or get picked for a minigame. Speaking of minigames, they're a fun change of pace, even if they mostly boil down to mashing the A button. It's a great arcade experience when playing against a friend, but since there is no online, chances are you'll be playing against the CPU 99% of the time, and it really isn't up to the task. It's by far the weakest CPU out of any Inazuma game. Moving on to number 9, we have Inazuma Eleven Strikers 2012 Extreme, or as I like to call it, Strikers 1.1. As a release, this is hot garbage and should be dead last, since it is basically the same game as base Strikers. As a game, I still cannot put it below the original because it has slightly more content. It adds a final match against Team Zero and a small batch of Go characters. So you beat the story in a few hours again, unlock Bylong and Tetsuket, and then you steamroll every team in the game with fighting spirits. They're not completely broken, but they function like level 4 techniques that only Go characters can use, which gives them a clear edge. Before we move on with the video, I briefly wanted to remind you that I've rolled out a milestone system to this channel that will see me do a challenge run of the game hinted on screen with every milestone reached. So if you've been enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe and let's hit the next milestone. With that said, back to our ranking. I might get hate for this, but I'm putting Inazuma Eleven at number 8. Now, I know it's important to respect the OG, and it's also what made the foundation for all the games to come. But as a testament to how far this franchise has come, I can't put this game any higher. Obviously, it's by far the clunkiest game with the least responsive controls, the least special techniques, and the exploration is limited to only Inazuma City, which makes that aspect quite stale. The game also doesn't really encourage exploring all that much, since you don't get to take more than 10 steps without a random encounter. You can't even blame technical limitations, because when you scout players they challenge you on the spot, and that's how street battles also play out in the later games. I feel like the usage of random encounters could have definitely been avoided. Speaking of the scouting system, it's quite tedious compared to later entries. Nelly sends her aide to look for suitable players from the team you requested, and you have to play multiple matches before you get a shortlist. Meaning if by any chance the player you want is not on it, you're essentially going to play through more filler matches and repeat the process until you get lucky. Albeit being somewhat short and narratively one of the weakest, the story is very iconic. But it differs slightly from the anime, which in my opinion handles it way better. For example, Mark learning Majin the Hand while training with the seniors never sat right with me. Compared to the Majin vs God parallel in the anime, where the technique was also heavily foreshadowed and didn't just appear out of thin air. Finally, one of the biggest gripes I have with this game is how much freedom it gives you in the story matches. I know it sounds like a positive, but it really isn't. The game doesn't employ any kind of story cutscene or scripted events, basically letting the games play out normally like any other friendly match. This implies that if you play well, you might not even get the chance to see the opponent's techniques, nor it gives room for the characters to interact and develop. Everything just feels very shallow. For example, in the Shuriken match, you're supposed to win by using the Fire Rooster, which you spend about an entire chapter trying to master. But in my playthrough, I even forgot to equip it in the first place and won the match like normal. This is by far the game I played the least, and I don't see myself going back to it anytime soon. At number 7, I'm placing InazumaEleven Go Shadow and Light. The biggest merit this game has is probably the technical overhaul. It was to be somewhat expected since this game is on 3DS, but it's right to say that Inazuma transitioned to 3D quite seamlessly, unlike some other franchises. InazumaEleven Go takes place 10 years after the events of InazumaEleven 3 and essentially acts as a soft reboot for the series, introducing a whole new cast of characters, which to be quite frank with you, are mostly forgettable, except for Ricardo and Victor. I'm not counting Arion because he's essentially a watered down Mark that boasts an overly perfect moral compass, making him feel closer to a saint than a human. Notably, Go adds a new mechanic in the name of Fighting Spirits, or Keshin in Japanese. They're a great addition story-wise, as their existence and evolution throughout the story is heavily linked to characters' growth, but they pretty much break the game, since Fighting Spirits essentially dunk on the rest of the game, and any non-summoner character is quite frankly a wasted slot, since even though you may only have 3 spirits active at the same time, there's no real reason not to have 8 more ready in the back. The story is not the worst, but it is still kinda weak and slow. The beginning is painfully predictable and I kept waiting for a twist. It does not really pick up until the resistance forms at the end of chapter 4, and it only gets kind of interesting in the last 2 chapters. Mount Olympus though is by far the least interesting final boss team out of any Inazuma game, since unlike most of the other teams, they get barely any build up throughout the story and are basically introduced as you get to play against them. You know they exist, but that's pretty much the extent. Sadly, that alone is enough for me to confidently say Go's ending is by far the worst one to date. Each version pushes a different subplot. Light explores Victor and Bylong and their clash of ideals, rebellion versus loyalty. It is nothing amazing, but it is something. Shadow focuses on a sacrifice story on an inhabited island with Arion and Tezcat, which is slightly more interesting. Depending on your version, you fight Ancient Dark or Unlimited Shining, and then they're combined 0. Those are probably the coolest matches in the game. Outside of that, the post-game is one of the thinnest in the series, second only to the original game that basically has nothing. It's especially frustrating to play through it, since in Go 1 matches are much shorter compared to other games in the series, making scoring 5 goals for an S rating in Tyson routes very difficult at times. One last thing I want to point out, and I apologize beforehand to any British Inazuma fans watching this video, the Go English dub really took me out of it when I replayed it for this video. The delivery is horribly stiff and it completely broke my immersion. At number 6, I got InazumaEleven Go Strikers 2013. I know it's a hot take to have any Strikers game above Dead Last, but I just can't help but praise just how perfect of a fanservice game this is. It's pretty much based Strikers on steroids and I love it. It doesn't stop at introducing all the new Chronostone's characters. It also adds a new caravan mode that lets you play through all the major matches in the entire series, spanning through the Raimon era, the Inazuma Japan era, and the new Raimon era. It uses a top-down minimap system that also features minigames along the way, which is a nice little touch. The gameplay is pretty much the same, but it adds armorified spirits and Miximax, which obviously are really cool and add to the enjoyment of the game, but they're completely busted for a variety of reasons. First, Miximax. It can be activated by holding any D-pad button while controlling a character, even when you don't have the ball. Doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, it isn't. If we ignore the fact that it can fully reset the opponent's shot charge, making you able to hold them hostage by just having a character that can Miximax selected. It doesn't end here though, because aside from the obvious stat boost it offers, it changes how the special gauge works. When a character is Miximaxed, their special bar turns green. But instead of being only usable when fully charged, it can be used as many times in a row as you wish, meaning it completely bypasses the dribble move dilemma I mentioned when talking about Strikers. As for armorified spirits, well, yeah, see, if fighting spirits are like level 4 moves, Keshin Armed feels like level 6 or even 7, which obviously can only be stopped by other armorified saving techniques. Taking that into account, since the game has well 18 Keshin Arm shots, surely there's gonna be a ton of saving techniques. One singular Keshin Armed save versus 18 different shots. This game is as broken as it gets, really. At least the game makes you earn the busted stuff by adding an awakening meter to each character in the game. Usually, armorified techniques are unlocked after playing a few dozens of games with a player, so at least you won't steamroll everyone right out of the gate. This game also has a new training function, which is genuinely so funny to me. You get to choose one or more players to send on their training journeys, and when they come back, their awakening meter and TP will have gone up. And how long must you wait until you get your players back? Like 5 or 10 matches? The answer is up to 24 hours.
Wait, do you mean in-game hours?
No, you get the full Clash of Clans experience with this one. You will wait the full 24 hours before getting your player back. Period. Again, like the original Strikers, it's a lot of fun with friends, and I find watching multiplayer matches really entertaining too. At number 5, I'm placing InazumaEleven 3 Lightning Bolt and Bomb Blast. After InazumaEleven 2's near sci-fi story, we go back to a good old tournament arc, yet this time it's on a bigger scale. We're playing the Football Frontier International with Inazuma Japan. Can't really go wrong with that setup. The story is good. It picks up right off the bat, and even though it doesn't have any particular highs in my opinion, it's consistently interesting. Exploration is fun. You visit areas themed around each national team, and you can find maps that reopen otherwise inaccessible zones from InazumaEleven 2. There's a lot to uncover. Gameplay wise, it's essentially peak DS era InazumaEleven. It brings back the mechanics from InazumaEleven 2, shot blocking and long shots, but also adds chain shots and special tactics to the mix. To be honest, I think both the new mechanics aren't as game-changing as the ones introduced in InazumaEleven 2. but they are satisfying gimmicks that keep matches feeling varied. A glaring issue this game has is that since the game wants you to feel how much stronger the players are compared to the previous two games, they're mostly equipped with high TP moves, which is fine per se, but not when paired with TP pools that clearly didn't evolve the same way. Early on, TP management is rough. I mean, Axel can't even use Fireball Storm more than once. One questionable choice is how the scouting system was handled, which is very divisive. Unlike in InazumaEleven 2, you can only scout players from story teams after you finish the game and then beat those teams again in a friendly. Personally, I do not mind this, since I usually stick to the canon roster during the story for immersion, but I get why it bothers some players. It also nudges you to spend more time with teams that were shortchanged during the main matches. For example, the Argentina team's game gets overshadowed by the showdown with Julio Acuto, so this system gives them a bit more spotlight. What InazumaEleven 3 can boast is definitely a set of very memorable characters, with each team having their own background explored to some degree and always being recurring to the story. The Little Gigantes is my favorite boss team, not because they're extremely flashy or powerful, but because I love the concept of them resembling the original Raimon team, since they're coached by none other than David Evans, who was also the coach of the original InazumaEleven. All in all, I loved this game, but to me it was always missing some kind of climax, which was actually taken care of in the next entry, which is InazumaEleven 3 Ogre Attacks. This is the superior version of InazumaEleven 3, thanks to the much needed secret final boss, Ogre. Most of the game plays the same, but throughout the chapters you get cutscenes from the future showing Ogre preparing an assault to erase Inazuma Japan, who they blame for the lenience of their era. Ogre is a unit of soldiers from 80 years in the future who use football as a means of war. Ironically, they seem to be led by a descendant of Seymour Hillman, the original Raymond coach. On the other side, the one trying to stop Ogre is Canon Evans, Mark's grandson, aided by Professor Killard, who strongly resembles Ray Dark. The setup is great, but even by the end we never learn why Hillman's descendant is evil while Ray Dark's lookalike is good. That loose end is a big reason this game lands at 4th place for me. Gameplay wise, the extra chapter is a blast. You travel to the future with your squad to meet Canon and face the Ogre. The future match is a love letter to players who want a real challenge. It might be the hardest story fight in the series. A level 98 Lancer up front with a near unstoppable shot, and an overall team average of around level 90. For perspective, you are expected to get to this match at around level 65 to 70. A really cool detail that's often overlooked is that Ogre's moves are a deliberate homage to earlier war-coded moves. They appear to use evolved versions of Brockenborg, Germany's national team Hisatsu's, with Doom Spear being the evolved version of Gunshot, Doom Rain of Assault Shot, Needle Hammer of Stinger, and Electric Trap of Shoot Trap. Ogre is a memorable villain team, though the unresolved threads keep them just below teams like Zeus or Genesis in my rankings. At number 3 we have InazumaEleven Go Galaxy. Definitely the hardest release to actually get your hands on, since it never actually left Japan. This game is weird, because it acts as a soft reboot in the soft reboot. Unlike Chronostones, that sees a lot of returning characters from Go, Galaxy basically introduces us to an entire new cast of both teammates and villains. It is not ridiculous to say that Galaxy has one of the most interesting storylines the series has to offer. It has everything: plot twists, betrayals, clashes of ideals, you name it. Even just the fact that the game takes place in space for the most part, and the entire planet's survival is on the line, makes the stakes feel as high as they've ever been. The mid-game is somewhat slow and dialogue-filled, but the game makes up for it with a phenomenal final match against Ixal Fleet. An insanely high tension game with constant back and forth that keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it ends on a wild scoreline. As the last mainline game before Victory Road, it has the largest roster, which gives you endless team building options. The matches are fun, with each planet's gimmick adding variety, especially in Ayadi. It also balances armor-fied Keshins from Chronostones and Twix Miximax, making it the most balanced of the Go trilogy. Then, why is this game only in 3rd place? Well, first off, I'm not a big fan of the cast. I still think this game would have been a perfect opportunity to develop all the side characters introduced in the previous entries, like Bylung, Tazcat, or Quentin, or even bring back some of the teammates from Raimon like Aitor. The biggest flaw of this game though is definitely the newly introduced gimmick, Souls. I'll say it, I think Souls right out suck. Why do they suck? Well, Kenshins are manifestations of the bearer's fighting spirit, whereas souls are manifestations of the bearer's fighting spirit? See the problem here? Souls are essentially fighting spirits 1.1, or in this case, 0.5, since they're worse in every way possible, whether it be gameplay wise, story wise, and even just visually they look so lame compared to Keshins. Massive downgrade. If they had either stuck with fighting spirits or chosen to develop side characters from older games, this game could have definitely made the top 2, which instead is occupied by none other than Inazuma Eleven 2, Firestorm and Blizzard. Hot take, flaming take, blazing take even. Inazuma Eleven 2 has the best story out of every Inazuma game. Raimon wins the football frontier, and the next thing they know they're fighting Naruto running aliens that blow schools up with footballs. That's a great setup if I've ever seen one. In this game, Mark travels across Japan to recruit new members and stop the aliens' rampage. It is a simple plot, but it is packed with iconic moments. Sean accepting his brother's death, Axel's return against Epsilon, Xine's reveal, and Aquilina's true identity. I love every new character here. Hurley, Victoria, Scott, Darren, and especially Sean Frost, whose development and backstory are the most touching and complex in the franchise for me. Xine is my favorite villain. He appears as early as chapter 4 under the name Xavier, and he is always present, shadowing Raimon and making you question whether he really is Xine until the reveal. The endgame is outstanding. The match with Genesis is one of the series' best. It is heartfelt and emotional, rather than pure hype like Zeus or Ogre. You learn the aliens are orphans exposed to the Alius Crystal, willing to do anything for their foster father Astron, whose real child was murdered 10 years earlier. His grief curdled into hatred for the world, which led him to create the aliens to start a planet-ending war. And it does not end there. While Mark was traveling, the original Raimon was exposed to the crystal by Astrem's aid, creating the Dark Emperors. I know many people don't like Dark Emperors, and yes, them reverting because Mark screams his heart out is a little questionable, but I think it works as a thematic closer. I also love both Superboss teams Prominence and Diamond Dust. No Deprees, and I just really like Torch and Gazelle. Especially Gazelle. I have but one singular gripe with this game, literally one, and it lies in the endgame. The Mount Fuji Forest, or as I like to call it, the Mount Fuji Maze. This forest has absolutely zero business being this big and convoluted, but if it was that alone, it would still be manageable. In the forest, there are random encounters, meaning you are trying to navigate a massive maze and every 5 seconds you're yanked into a street battle. Good luck remembering which way you were going. This was my first ever Inazuma game, so I might be biased to some degree, but I do truly believe it's packed with the best characters and story in the series. Even then, I can't put it any higher since I believe the final game on the list to be the ultimate InazumaEleven experience. At the very pinnacle of the list, I'm placing none other than InazumaEleven Go Chronostones, Thunderflash and Wildfire. Cash-ins? Check. Cash-in Armed? Check. Miximax? Check. Bylung? Check. Wait, what? This game has it all, starting with easily the most pretentious yet whimsical story. Who doesn't love time travel? This time Arion and friends have to go back in time to gather the Ultimate 11 in order to prevent Protocol Omega from erasing football existence. The game has you wander around Sengoku Japan, medieval France, ancient China and even the Cretaceous era 68 millions of years in the past. What other Inazuma game lets you have a match against literal dinosaurs? The sense of wonder this game is able to convey is second to no title in this list. Being able to converse with historical figures like King Arthur and Nobunaga, and being part of events like the 100 Years' War with a football twist is truly an immersive experience. Unlike Galaxy, the story doesn't miss a beat. It only keeps you in the present for so long before you're hurled into another era, keeping things always feeling fresh. It is also full of emotional moments, my favorite being by far Faye finding out Goldie is his mom. I think it was one of the very few times Inazuma has been able to tear me up like a baby. The endgame is also elite, packed with plot twists like Faye's betrayal and Zarang's arrival. On top of that, you play a best of 3 against Engen, hyper-evolved humans who want a world without ordinary people, which lets you try many different players. In the final stretch, I am not the biggest fan of Ragna as a last boss team, since they suffer a bit from the same problem as Mount Olympus. But the real star is your side, Chronostorm, the Ultimate 11. You enter that match with a lineup of Miximax users and Cash-in armed monsters. I have never felt more confident going into a story game. The climax is great too. 11 people, 1 shot. Ultimate 11 Assault is one of the hypest moments in the entire series. Yes, it leans on the power of friendship, but that is the franchise score. Now, the gameplay. Is it absolutely broken? Yes. Is it fun as hell? Also yes. Look, I think the concept of balance in a single player game, or in this case mostly a single player game, is relative. Of course, being able to steamroll everything and anything isn't fun, but when everyone is overpowered, no one really is. Catch my drift? Cash-in Armed is absolutely nuts. It makes your player run twice as fast, waste 0 TP with each used move, and grants a ridiculous power boost like nothing else. Stack Miximax on top of that, and it's wraps. Level 5 though is smart, and since they knew the potential players have in this game, they also blessed us with a peak post game with level 99 competition routes, where on top of being max level, opponents also have boosted calculations, making them easily the hardest matches out of any Inazuma 11 game. Yeah, it might not be the most balanced game with the most coherent story, but it's the most fun with an adorable cast of characters whom I love from the bottom of my heart. Well guys, that's that. Those are my rankings on every single Inazuma game. But remember, this was just my opinion, so make sure you also let me know yours in the comment section below. Lastly, I want to thank you guys for the support on the last video. It's been incredible. If you enjoyed this one, feel free to leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.